Hello, and welcome to another gentle journey on Sleepy Professor Stories. Tonight, you are invited to travel far from the familiar rhythms of the surface world, drifting slowly toward the deepest parts of the ocean. This is not a place of danger or drama, but one of distance and patience, where waves and storms can no longer be felt, and where the passing of time seems to stretch and soften. Far below the reach of sunlight, the Hadal Zone exists as a quiet layer of our planet, shaped by gravity, water, and immense spans of time. Movement here is unhurried. Change arrives gently. And even though this region is rarely visited, it has always been part of Earth's calm, ongoing story. As you listen, there is nothing you need to prepare for and nothing you need to solve. This journey is simply about understanding why some places remain softly unexplored, not because they are hostile, but because they move at a pace very different from our own. By drifting downward into these depths, we begin to see our planet not as a collection of busy surfaces, but as a layered world, full of quiet spaces that continue their work without attention. If you find comfort in these slow, science-based journeys, you are always welcome to support the channel by liking the video or subscribing whenever it feels natural to do so. It is a small, gentle way to help others discover a place to rest, learn, and unwind. For now, you can allow your breathing to slow. Let your shoulders drop, your jaw soften, and your thoughts loosen their grip. Nothing here needs to be remembered. Learning can happen quietly, even as sleep begins to arrive. Drifting off is not missing anything. It is part of the experience. Let's begin. As the surface world fades from view, a deeper stillness waits below, inviting us to continue downward, where light grows thin and the ocean starts to feel truly distant. You begin at the surface, where the ocean meets the air and light moves freely across the water. Here, waves rise and fall with familiar rhythm, shaped by wind, weather, and the turning of the planet. The surface feels alive with motion and sound, but even now, beneath this restless skin, the ocean is already becoming calmer. As you drift downward, the noise softens. The sharp brightness above begins to blur. There is nothing you need to do, no effort required, as gravity and water gently guide you lower. The descent does not happen all at once. It unfolds slowly, layer by layer, as if the ocean is inviting you to let go of the world you know. Colors begin to fade first. Reds and oranges dissolve quietly, leaving behind cooler shades that linger a little longer before they, too, thin into blue. The water grows heavier around you, not in a way that feels threatening, but in a way that feels steady and enclosing, like a careful embrace. Time seems to stretch, and moments lose their sharp edges. As you continue downward, the surface becomes a memory rather than a presence. The movement of waves no longer reaches this far. Storms pass above without consequence, their energy spent long before it could ever disturb this depth. The ocean here feels patient. It has been waiting in this calm state for longer than human history, shaped by slow processes that unfold over spans almost too large to imagine. You are simply passing through, allowed to observe without interruption. Pressure increases as you descend, building gradually with every meter of water above you. It is constant, even, and reliable, pressing from all directions at once. Instead of feeling like a force, it feels like a condition, part of what defines this place. Life that exists here does not struggle against it. It belongs to it. The water carries the weight of the entire ocean, and yet it remains still, holding that weight without tension. Light continues to thin until it no longer reaches you at all. Darkness arrives gently, without drama. It is not empty or frightening, but neutral, like the closing of your eyes when you grow tired. In this darkness, the sense of space expands. Without visual markers, distance becomes softer, harder to measure. The ocean feels wider, deeper, and more open than before. You are aware of the vastness not by seeing it, but by sensing how little there is to interrupt it. Here, movement slows naturally. Water circulates in subtle ways, driven by differences in temperature and density rather than surface winds. These motions are quiet and deliberate, unfolding over long periods of time. The ocean does not rush. It has no reason to. Everything here happens at a pace that encourages stillness, inviting you to match it, to let your thoughts drift as slowly as the currents around you. As depth increases, the idea of the ocean as a single body begins to change. It no longer feels like one continuous space, but like a series of layers, each with its own character. You pass through regions where life becomes more sparse, not because conditions are harsh, but because energy is limited. Without sunlight, food must arrive from far above or be created in ways that do not rely on light. This reality shapes everything, quietly and efficiently. There is a sense, as you move deeper, that the ocean is becoming more private. These depths are rarely seen, not because they are hidden intentionally, but because reaching them requires patience and care. Human presence here is brief and infrequent. The ocean remains largely undisturbed, continuing its slow rhythms regardless of observation. This untouched quality is not emptiness, but continuity, a reminder that much of the planet exists beyond daily attention. Your breathing remains slow and easy as you imagine this descent. There is nothing to remember, nothing to analyze. The details are allowed to pass through you like water itself, leaving behind only a feeling of calm understanding. The ocean does not demand focus. It simply exists, and in doing so, it offers permission to rest. As you approach the greatest depths, the seafloor begins to take shape, not as a flat boundary, but as a landscape of subtle rises and deepening slopes. The idea of the ocean ending gives way to the realization that it transforms instead. Trenches appear as long, narrow valleys carved by the slow movement of Earth's outer layers. These features are not sudden breaks, but gentle descents, shaped over immense spans of time by forces that move almost imperceptibly. The Hadal Zone begins where the familiar world of the ocean gives way to something quieter still. It is defined not by a line, but by a feeling, a sense that you have crossed into a place where conditions become more extreme in their consistency. Pressure is greater, temperatures remain near freezing, and the darkness is complete. And yet, this environment is stable. It does not fluctuate wildly. It holds steady, maintaining the same calm state year after year, century after century. Life here, though limited, is carefully adapted. It does not rush or compete aggressively. It conserves energy, moves slowly, and exists in balance with the surrounding water. These organisms are part of the ocean's long story, shaped by the same patience that carved the trenches themselves. Their presence is quiet proof that even in the deepest places, Earth continues to support life in gentle, resilient ways. You sense now how far removed this place is from the surface world. Human time feels small here, Days and nights lose meaning. Seasons do not reach this depth. The ocean floor continues its slow work regardless of calendars or clocks. Sediments settle grain by grain. Chemical processes unfold at measured rates. Everything happens without urgency, guided by physical laws that never hurry. As your imagined descent slows, you find yourself hovering at the edge of this deepest zone, not entering fully, but observing from a place of calm curiosity. There is no need to go further yet. Simply being near this boundary is enough to feel the shift in perspective it offers. The ocean is no longer something to cross or conquer. It is a layered world, vast and patient, holding spaces that remain largely untouched because they do not ask to be changed. You rest in this awareness, letting the surface world fade completely from your thoughts. The mind grows quieter, matching the stillness of the water around you. And as you remain here, suspended between what is known and what lies deeper still, you begin to sense that the journey is only just beginning, and that below this threshold, the ocean grows even more distant, even more hushed, waiting to be explored at its own unhurried pace. As you drift a little deeper, the last traces of sunlight quietly release their hold. There is no sudden moment when light disappears. Instead, it thins gently, like a thought fading as you begin to fall asleep. Brightness softens, then dims, until illumination becomes more memory than presence. The ocean does not announce this change. It simply allows it to happen, slowly and without urgency, inviting your awareness to adjust in the same unhurried way. Without sunlight, the ocean becomes a different kind of place. Vision is no longer the primary guide. Shapes lose their sharp edges. Distance feels less defined. The water around you seems to expand, no longer limited by what can be seen. In this darkness, space feels wider rather than smaller. It opens, stretching in all directions, creating a sense of calm vastness that does not press in, but gently surrounds. There is nothing empty about this environment. Even without light, the ocean remains active in quiet, subtle ways. Water continues to move, though its motion is almost imperceptible. Currents slide past one another slowly, guided by differences in temperature and density, rather than surface winds. These movements unfold over long periods, measured not in moments, but in gradual shifts that take years, even longer, to fully complete. Sound changes here as well. Near the surface, waves crash, bubbles rise, and life produces constant noise. Deeper down, these sounds fade. The water absorbs and softens them until what remains is a gentle hush. Vibrations still travel through the ocean, but they do so quietly, losing their sharpness as distance increases. What you sense is not silence, but a calm reduction of noise, like stepping into a room where voices have grown distant and low. In this quieter world, the ocean seems removed from the everyday rhythms that shape life above. There are no sunrises or sunsets to mark time, no passing clouds, no seasonal storms stirring the water. Change still happens, but it does so gradually, guided by deep processes that move slowly and steadily. Time here feels stretched, smoothed out, free from the constant signals that usually demand attention. You may notice how naturally your own thoughts begin to slow in response. There is nothing you need to focus on. No detail requires effort to understand. The darkness does not ask questions or demand interpretation. It simply exists, offering a restful backdrop against which the mind can settle. In this space, attention becomes softer, drifting rather than fixing itself in place. Life in this environment adapts to the absence of light with quiet efficiency. Without sunlight to power growth directly, energy arrives in other ways, carried downward from the surface or generated through chemical processes deep within the ocean. These pathways are not dramatic. They are steady, reliable, and slow, supporting forms of life that move carefully and conserve energy. Nothing here is wasted. Everything is measured. Motion itself changes character in the deep ocean. Near the surface, movement is frequent and often rapid, driven by waves, tides, and weather. Here, movement becomes rare and deliberate. Water flows gently. Creatures drift or crawl rather than swim quickly. The environment encourages patience, rewarding stillness over speed. Even the smallest motions feel meaningful, unfolding in a space where nothing rushes past unnoticed. The absence of light also changes how the ocean feels emotionally. Darkness, when it arrives slowly and completely, becomes neutral. It does not threaten. It does not conceal danger. Instead, it resembles the darkness behind closed eyelids, familiar and calming. Without visual stimulation, the mind is free to rest, no longer pulled from one image to the next. Awareness turns inward, matching the quiet stability of the surroundings. As you remain in this place, you sense how far removed it is from human activity. Ships pass far above without effect. Voices, engines, and surface disturbances dissolve long before they could reach this depth. The ocean here remains largely untouched by daily human rhythms, continuing its slow patterns without interruption. This distance creates a feeling of separation that is not lonely, but peaceful, like being far from a busy road at night. Temperature remains steady in these depths, hovering near freezing, but rarely changing. This constancy adds to the sense of calm. There are no sudden shifts to adapt to, no surprises. The environment holds its conditions with remarkable consistency, offering stability to the life that exists within it. This steadiness allows biological and chemical processes to unfold quietly, guided by predictable patterns rather than sudden change. The deeper you imagine yourself drifting, the more the ocean seems to become a place of listening rather than seeing. Information travels slowly, signals are faint. Awareness expands to include subtle sensations rather than sharp images. You become attuned to the feeling of water pressing evenly around you, to the gentle sense of being held within a vast, quiet system. There is a simplicity to this environment that feels reassuring. Without light, without loud sound, without rapid motion, the ocean reveals a different way of existing. It shows how complexity can arise from calm processes, how life and movement do not require constant stimulation. Everything here works together in a balanced, unhurried flow. You may notice how this imagined darkness invites rest. Your breathing remains slow and steady. Your body feels supported, as if the water itself is carrying weight you no longer need to hold. There is nothing to remember from this place, nothing to take back with you except a sense of ease. Learning happens quietly, absorbed without effort. As the deep ocean continues to stretch out around you, it becomes clear that this absence of light is not a boundary, but a threshold. Beyond it lies an environment shaped by forces even more constant and profound. Pressure continues to build, sound fades further, and distance grows harder to measure. The ocean grows quieter still, preparing you gently for what comes next, where the weight of water itself becomes the defining presence, and the journey moves onward into even deeper calm. And as the darkness settles fully around you, another quiet influence begins to make itself known, one that presses softly from every side, guiding the ocean into an even more patient and enduring state. As you continue drifting deeper, you begin to sense something that is always present here, though it does not announce itself. Pressure surrounds you gently, arriving not as a sudden weight, but as a steady condition of the water itself. It increases gradually with depth, layer by layer, so smoothly that there is no moment when it feels overwhelming. Instead, it becomes part of the environment, as natural and expected as the water that holds you. Near the surface, pressure changes constantly. Waves rise and fall, air presses lightly on the skin, and the body adjusts without thought. In the deep ocean, pressure is different. It does not fluctuate or surprise. It remains constant, pressing evenly from all directions at once. There is no single source. It arrives from above, below, and around you, creating a sense of balance rather than strain. The ocean carries its own weight quietly, without resistance. You might imagine pressure as something heavy, something to push against. But here, it is more like a presence that supports. It defines the space, shaping everything within it. Water molecules are drawn closer together, forming a dense, stable environment. This closeness does not feel confining. It feels grounding, as if the ocean itself is holding everything in place, preventing sudden movement or disruption. As depth increases, pressure builds with remarkable consistency. It does not rush. It does not hesitate. It simply accumulates, following physical laws that never change. The deeper you go, the more water rests above you, and the greater the pressure becomes. Yet, because this increase is so gradual, it feels smooth, almost calming, like a slow settling rather than a descent. Life that exists in these depths does not resist pressure. It adapts to it completely. Cells, tissues, and structures are shaped by this constant force, designed to function without empty spaces or fragile forms. Everything is compact, efficient, and resilient. These organisms are not weighed down. They are supported, held in equilibrium by the surrounding water. Even the ocean floor feels shaped by pressure. Sediments settle slowly, pressed gently into place over long periods of time. Rock layers form under immense weight, transformed gradually rather than violently. This process takes place over spans so long they are difficult to imagine, yet it unfolds with quiet certainty. Pressure becomes a tool of creation, guiding change without urgency. As you imagine yourself here, there is nothing you need to adjust or control. The environment does the work for you. Pressure equalizes naturally, leaving no gaps, no imbalance. It presses evenly, reminding the body and mind what it feels like to be fully supported. There is no single direction to lean toward. Everything feels centered. In this deep ocean world, pressure replaces many of the forces that dominate life at the surface. Wind has no influence. Waves cannot reach. Sudden motion fades away. What remains is a steady state, defined by consistency rather than change. The ocean feels settled, as if it has found a position it intends to hold. You may notice how this idea of constant pressure encourages stillness. Without fluctuations, there is little to respond to. Movement slows naturally. Energy is conserved. The environment rewards calm persistence rather than speed. Everything here seems designed to last, to continue quietly without interruption. Pressure also shapes how sound travels. Vibrations move through dense water differently than they do near the surface. Sharp noises soften quickly. Distance absorbs energy. What remains is a muted world, where signals spread slowly and fade gently. This quiet supports rest, allowing the ocean to remain undisturbed by sudden disturbance. The deeper you go, the more pressure becomes the defining feature of the environment. Temperature changes little. Darkness remains complete. Pressure, however, continues its steady increase, marking depth more reliably than sight or sound. It becomes a way of knowing where you are, not through measurement, but through sensation and understanding. Despite its magnitude, this pressure does not feel aggressive. It does not push or crush. It simply exists, filling space evenly. It is always present, yet never demanding attention. Over time, it becomes easy to forget, blending seamlessly into the background of the deep ocean experience. You might imagine how different this is from life above, where forces constantly compete. Gravity pulls downward, structures push upward, and movement requires effort. Here, everything settles into balance. Pressure holds water and life in place, creating an environment where stability is the norm. As your thoughts slow, you may feel a sense of reassurance in this consistency. There is comfort in knowing what to expect, in being surrounded by a force that does not change suddenly or unpredictably. The ocean at this depth feels dependable, steady in a way that invites rest. This constant pressure also explains why visiting these depths requires care and patience. Human bodies are not built for such conditions. Rapid changes can disrupt balance. That is why descent must be slow, allowing adjustment to happen naturally. The ocean does not welcome haste. It favors gradual movement and respect for its steady rules. As you imagine lingering here, the idea of pressure shifts again. It becomes less about weight and more about connection. Every part of the ocean is linked by this force, from the surface to the deepest trenches. Pressure is what binds the water together, creating a continuous body that moves and rests as one. There is something calming in this thought, that the ocean holds itself together so completely. Nothing here is separate. Everything is supported by the same surrounding force. The sense of isolation you might expect at great depth is replaced by a feeling of inclusion, of being part of a vast, unified system. Your breathing remains slow and easy as you rest in this idea. There is nothing you need to remember. Pressure is already doing its quiet work, holding the ocean in balance and allowing life to continue at its own gentle pace. The mind can release its tension, trusting in this steady presence. As you remain suspended in this deep, balanced world, you begin to sense how pressure prepares the way for the next stage of the journey. Below, the ocean floor takes shape under its influence, forming landscapes that speak of time and movement far beyond human scale. And with that awareness, your attention begins to drift toward the shapes hidden in the darkness below, where the ocean's form becomes even more quietly defined. And as pressure continues its patient embrace, the seafloor waits beneath you, shaped slowly by weight and time, inviting a closer look at the hidden contours it has formed. As you drift closer to the deepest parts of the ocean, the water beneath you begins to take on form. What once felt like endless open space slowly reveals a subtle shape, not abrupt or dramatic, but gently contoured. The ocean floor does not arrive suddenly. It rises toward you in long, patient slopes, shaped over stretches of time so vast they soften the idea of beginnings and endings. Here, the earth does not rush to show itself. It reveals its structure slowly, inviting quiet observation. These deep trenches are not scars or breaks, but natural expressions of movement deep within the planet. Far below the ocean, Earth's outer layers shift almost imperceptibly, sliding past and beneath one another. This motion is slow, steady and continuous, guided by heat rising from the planet's interior. Over immense spans of time, this movement creates long valleys in the seafloor, places where one part of the crust bends downward, forming the deepest regions of the ocean. You sense the scale of these trenches, not by seeing their full shape, but by feeling how gradually they deepen. Their walls descend gently, sometimes for many miles, before reaching their lowest points. There are no sharp edges or sudden drops here. Everything unfolds gradually, shaped by pressure, gravity, and time working together without urgency. The Earth feels calm in its construction, confident in processes that do not need to hurry. Sediment drifts downward from far above, settling quietly along these slopes. Tiny particles carried by slow currents fall grain by grain, adding to layers that have been building for ages. Nothing disturbs this process. There is no rush, no interruption. Each layer rests atop the last, creating a soft record of passing time, written not in words, but in matter gently laid to rest. As you imagine hovering above one of these trenches, you become aware of how narrow and focused they are compared to the vast plains of the deep ocean. They stretch long and thin, following the lines where Earth's outer surface slowly bends and shifts. Their shapes tell a story of balance, of forces meeting and adjusting, rather than colliding violently. The planet reshapes itself quietly, preferring gradual change over sudden transformation. The walls of these trenches hold textures shaped by both movement and stillness. Rock forms under pressure, compacted and transformed over long periods. Chemical interactions occur slowly, altering minerals in subtle ways. Everything here speaks of endurance rather than drama. These are landscapes built to last, shaped by conditions that remain steady for millions of years at a time. Despite their depth, trenches are not isolated from the rest of the ocean. Water moves in and out of them slowly, guided by differences in temperature and density. This circulation is gentle, almost meditative, allowing the trench to remain connected to the larger ocean while maintaining its own quiet character. Nothing is sealed off. Everything participates in the planet's slow, continuous exchange. The deeper you consider these formations, the more they seem like reminders of Earth's patience. On the surface, change often feels sudden and disruptive. Storms rise quickly, land shifts in moments of visible motion. Here, change is measured differently. It unfolds so slowly that it becomes part of the background, something you sense rather than witness. The trenches deepen not through forceful action, but through consistency. Life that exists near these trenches adapts to their shape and stability. It settles along slopes and valleys, finding places where nutrients collect and currents slow. The geography creates pockets of opportunity, not through abundance, but through reliability. The environment does not promise variety. It offers steadiness, and life responds by conserving energy and persisting quietly. you may notice how naturally your thoughts begin to follow the same pattern. There is no need to imagine every detail of these landscapes. The feeling of depth and age is enough. The mind does not need sharp images to understand vastness. It responds instead to the sense of time stretching outward, far beyond individual moments or concerns. Trenches also mark boundaries in Earth's structure, places where one region transitions into another. They are not endings, but thresholds. Beneath them, processes continue even deeper, hidden from view, yet still active. Heat flows upward, materials recycle slowly. The planet remains dynamic, even in its quietest places, moving in ways that do not require attention to continue. As human understanding reaches these depths, it does so carefully. The shapes of trenches have been mapped gradually, using sound waves and brief visits by instruments designed to withstand the pressure. These glimpses are partial, never complete. They offer outlines rather than full pictures, leaving much to remain unknown. This incompleteness feels appropriate, matching the slow pace of the environment itself. You sense that these hidden landscapes do not ask to be fully revealed. They exist comfortably beyond constant observation, continuing their quiet formation regardless of whether they are seen. There is a balance here between curiosity and restraint, between the desire to understand and the acceptance that some places reveal themselves only slowly. As you rest in this awareness, the trenches feel less like distant extremes and more like integral parts of a living planet. They are not separate from the world above, but deeply connected to it, shaped by the same forces that raise mountains and shift continents. Their depth simply allows those forces to express themselves in a different way. The ocean floor, shaped into valleys and slopes, feels like a record written over time too vast to measure easily. Each contour reflects countless moments of movement, pressure, and settling. Nothing here is accidental. Every shape exists because conditions allowed it to form, patiently and persistently. You remain suspended above this quiet landscape, not moving closer yet, simply observing. There is no need to descend further right now. The presence of these trenches alone is enough to invite reflection. They remind you that Earth holds many layers, each operating at its own pace, each contributing to the whole without seeking attention. As the idea of these hidden shapes settles into your thoughts, another awareness begins to surface. If such immense features can form so quietly over such long periods, it becomes natural to wonder how and why humans are drawn to explore them at all. Curiosity begins to stir gently, preparing the mind for the next part of the journey, where patient landscapes meet the careful reach of human exploration. And as the trenches rest in their slow-formed shapes below, a quiet question lingers above them, inviting curiosity to drift downward, wondering how and why we ever try to reach such distant places. As you linger above the deepest parts of the ocean, a gentle understanding begins to settle in. Distance here is not just measured in space, but in patience. The deep does not invite quick visits. It asks for time, for careful movement, for an approach that unfolds slowly rather than all at once. You sense that reaching these depths is less about determination and more about listening to what the environment allows. From the surface, the ocean can appear inviting and familiar, but the journey downward stretches far beyond everyday experience. Each layer of water adds weight, distance, and complexity. Equipment must pass through regions of light, then darkness, then immense pressure, all while remaining balanced and intact. This is not a journey that rewards speed. It favors steadiness, careful planning, and respect for forces that cannot be rushed. Human exploration has always moved fastest where conditions resemble those of the surface. On land, movement is easy. In shallow water, light and pressure remain manageable. But as depth increases, the ocean begins to set its own terms. Materials behave differently. Communication becomes faint. Every action requires anticipation rather than reaction. The deeper one goes, the more the environment leads the pace. You may imagine the long descent of a vessel designed for such journeys. It does not plunge. It sinks slowly, guided by gravity and buoyancy in careful balance. Each moment of descent is deliberate, allowing pressure to increase gradually, preventing stress or damage. The ocean does not tolerate haste here. It responds best to those who move in harmony with its slow rhythm. Engineering for these depths reflects this same patience. Structures must be compact, resilient, and simple. There is little room for excess. Every component must serve a purpose, are shaped to withstand constant pressure without resistance. Designs are tested repeatedly, refined over time rather than rushed into use. Progress happens in quiet steps, each building on what came before. Distance also plays a role. The deepest parts of the ocean are far from shore, often located in remote regions where weather, currents, and isolation add to the challenge. Reaching these places requires long journeys across open water, careful coordination, and windows of calm conditions. Even before descent begins, time has already been invested, reinforcing the idea that the deep cannot be reached casually. Communication slows as well. Signals that travel easily through air struggle in dense water. Messages become delayed, data arrives gradually, and real-time connection fades. This separation encourages autonomy and careful preparation. Once a descent begins, adjustments are limited. Everything must be ready in advance, planned with patience and foresight. You may notice how naturally this mirrors the pace of the environment itself. The deep ocean does not change quickly. Its processes unfold over long spans, guided by slow circulation, gradual sedimentation, and steady chemical interactions. Exploration that succeeds here does so by matching this pace, not by trying to overcome it. There is no frustration in this slowness. Instead, there is acceptance. The deep is not withholding itself out of resistance. It simply operates under conditions that require time. Understanding grows gradually through brief visits and careful observation. Each journey adds a small piece to a much larger picture, one that will never be complete all at once. You might sense how this approach fosters respect. When exploration takes time, it encourages care. Each descent is valued. Each observation matters. The environment is treated not as something to conquer, but as something to learn from quietly. This mindset aligns naturally with the deep ocean's own steady character. The limits encountered here are not failures, but boundaries. Materials have strengths. Humans have biological constraints. Technology has thresholds. Acknowledging these limits allows exploration to continue safely and sustainably. Pushing too quickly risks imbalance. Moving slowly preserves continuity. As you imagine this careful process, your own thoughts may begin to slow in response. There is nothing to rush toward. Understanding does not demand immediacy. It arrives in its own time, settling gently rather than striking suddenly. The deep ocean teaches this lesson without words, simply through the conditions it maintains. Even discoveries here arrive quietly. New details emerge not as dramatic revelations, but as subtle shifts in understanding. Patterns become clearer, connections form. Knowledge accumulates like sediment, layer by layer, until a broader picture takes shape. This gradual process feels fitting, mirroring the way the ocean itself has been shaped. The patience required to reach these depths also protects them. Limited access means limited disturbance. The deep remains largely untouched, not because it is unreachable, but because it resists excess. This resistance is gentle, never forceful, guiding human activity toward restraint rather than expansion. You may sense how this restraint creates balance. Exploration proceeds, but at a pace that allows reflection. Each step invites consideration of impact, of purpose, of necessity. The deep ocean remains a place where curiosity is tempered by care, where presence is brief and thoughtful. As you rest with this idea, there is comfort in knowing that some places are not meant for constant visitation. Their value lies partly in their distance, in the way they encourage humility and patience. The deep ocean does not need to be fully known to be respected. Your breathing remains slow, and even as this understanding settles, there is nothing you need to remember, nothing to analyze. The lesson of slowness is already doing its work, easing the mind and releasing urgency. Time stretches gently, mirroring the long descent that exploration requires. And as you remain suspended in this calm awareness, another thought begins to form. If reaching the deep takes such care and time, then what exists there must be shaped by the same patience. Life itself must move differently in these depths, adapting not to speed, but to steadiness, waiting quietly to be noticed. And as the journey pauses here, a quieter curiosity drifts downward, wondering how life itself learns to move and endure in a world where time, like the ocean, flows ever so slowly. As you rest within the deepest layers of the ocean, life reveals itself, not through movement or sound, but through presence. Here, existence does not announce itself. It simply continues, shaped by patience and balance. In this world without sunlight, life learns a different rhythm, one that values stillness over speed and conservation over display. You sense that survival here is not about competition, but about fitting gently into the conditions that never change quickly. The creatures of the Hadal Zone do not rush. Their movements are slow and deliberate, guided by the need to conserve energy in a place where nourishment arrives gradually. Without sunlight to drive abundance, every action is measured. Muscles contract carefully. Bodies drift or settle rather than swim with urgency. Motion becomes rare enough that when it happens, it feels meaningful, not wasted. You imagine how these forms of life exist without color or brightness. Vision is limited, sometimes unnecessary. Other senses take precedence, tuned to subtle changes in water pressure or faint chemical signals. The ocean communicates quietly here, and life listens just as quietly in return. Nothing is wasted on excess perception. Awareness is focused and calm. Energy is the most valuable resource in these depths. Food does not arrive daily or predictably. Instead, it drifts downward from far above or emerges slowly from the seafloor itself. Life adapts by slowing its internal pace. Metabolism eases into a gentle rhythm. Growth happens gradually. Reproduction follows long intervals, aligned with opportunity rather than urgency. There is a sense of completeness in this simplicity. These organisms do not appear deprived. They are precisely shaped for the world they inhabit. Soft bodies withstand pressure by yielding rather than resisting. Compact forms minimize energy loss. Every feature exists for a reason, refined by countless generations adapting quietly to the same steady conditions. And the absence of light does not feel like a loss here. Darkness becomes the normal state, removing the need for camouflage or display. Without visual competition, life focuses inward. Survival depends on efficiency, patience, and the ability to endure long stretches of stillness. In this way, the deep ocean offers a lesson in contentment, showing how life can thrive without constant stimulation. You may notice how naturally this environment encourages rest. Even imagining these slow movements invites your own body to relax. There is nothing to chase, nothing to escape. The deep ocean does not reward haste. It favors those who wait, who move only when necessary, who trust that stillness is not inactivity, but a form of balance. Some life forms drift gently, carried by slow currents rather than resisting them. Others settle along the seafloor, blending into the landscape shaped by pressure and time. Their presence is subtle, almost easy to miss, yet it persists. These organisms have learned that blending into the environment is safer than standing apart from it. Chemical processes replace sunlight as sources of energy in certain places. Here, life forms rely on reactions that unfold quietly, releasing just enough energy to sustain existence. These pathways operate without brightness or warmth, demonstrating that life does not require familiar conditions to continue. It simply requires stability and time. The deep ocean teaches that complexity can arise from simplicity. Without elaborate structures or rapid cycles, life organizes itself efficiently. Systems remain small, interconnected, and resilient. Disturbance is rare, and when it occurs, recovery happens slowly, guided by the same patience that defines the environment. You sense that these forms of life are not waiting to be discovered. They exist regardless of observation, continuing their quiet routines whether or not they are seen. Their value does not depend on attention. This independence adds to the feeling of calm, reminding you that the world is larger and more self-sustaining than daily concerns often suggest. As you imagine this quiet persistence, your thoughts soften. There is nothing you need to remember about these organisms. Understanding flows gently, absorbed without effort. Life here is not dramatic. It is steady, reliable, and complete in its simplicity. Even the passage of time feels different around these forms of life. Without day or night, rhythms follow internal cycles shaped by energy availability and environmental stability. Change happens, but it is subtle, unfolding over long periods. The deep ocean becomes a place where patience is not a choice, but a condition of existence. You may find comfort in this idea that life can adapt to almost any stable environment by slowing down and letting go of excess. The deep ocean offers a quiet alternative to the constant motion of the surface world. It suggests that survival does not always require effort, but alignment. As you remain with this thought, the presence of life in such depths feels less surprising and more inevitable. Given enough time and consistency, life finds a way to persist, even in darkness and pressure. It does so quietly, without fanfare, without urgency. Your breathing remains slow as this understanding settles. There is nothing you need to do. The deep ocean continues its calm work, supporting life that has learned to exist without noise or light. And as this quiet persistence surrounds you, another question begins to form gently, inviting curiosity to drift toward how time itself moves in such a still world. And as these silent lives continue their patient rhythms, time itself seems to slow beside them, inviting you to wonder how stillness reshapes the very way moments pass in the depths. Here, in the deepest ocean, time begins to feel unfamiliar. Without sunrise or sunset, without the shifting light that usually divides moments into days and nights, time loosens its usual structure. It no longer arrives in neat segments. Instead, it spreads outward, becoming something softer and more continuous. You sense that in this place, time is not counted, but experienced as a gentle flow. Near the surface, time is marked by change. Light moves across the water, tides rise and fall, weather passes overhead. These rhythms give shape to hours and days. But in the Hadal Zone, those signals never arrive. Darkness remains constant. Temperature changes very little. The ocean settles into a steady state where moments blend together without clear boundaries. You may notice how easily your own sense of time begins to slow in response. There is nothing here urging attention forward. No sound announces the next moment. No visual cue signals transition. The mind is free to release its habit of tracking progress. Awareness drifts instead, resting in the present without pressure to move on. In this environment, change still happens, but it happens quietly. Geological processes continue beneath the seafloor, reshaping rock through heat and pressure at speeds too slow to observe directly. Sediments continue to settle, grain by grain, forming layers that record passing eras without urgency. These processes do not pause, but they do not rush either. They unfold with remarkable patience. Life follows this same rhythm. Without light-driven cycles, biological activity adjusts to longer timelines. Growth is gradual. Movement is rare. Energy is conserved carefully, allowing organisms to persist over long spans without frequent activity. Time becomes something lived internally, guided by slow metabolic rhythms rather than external cues. You imagine how different this feels from life above, where schedules, clocks, and expectations shape every day. Here, none of those structures apply. The ocean does not ask what time it is. It does not divide its existence into productive or idle moments. Everything that happens here is simply part of a continuous state of being. This constancy gives the deep ocean a timeless quality, not frozen, but steady. Moments do not stack up in memory. They dissolve into one another, creating a sense of ongoing presence rather than progression. The ocean feels ancient, not because it is old, but because it has learned how to exist without marking time sharply. You may sense how comforting this can be. Without deadlines or transitions, the mind can rest. There is no need to anticipate what comes next. The present moment is enough, and it stretches gently, allowing thoughts to slow and settle. Even the movement of water reflects this softened sense of time. Currents shift gradually, guided by differences in density that change over long periods. These flows do not surge or stop abruptly. They drift, adjusting slowly, redistributing heat and nutrients, in ways that take years to complete. The ocean breathes, but its breaths are long and calm. Pressure and darkness reinforce this steady pace. Without fluctuations, there is little to react to. Stability becomes the defining feature of the environment. In such conditions, time loses its urgency. Processes are free to take as long as they need, guided by consistency rather than speed. As you remain with this idea, you may notice how your breathing mirrors the environment. Each breath arrives and leaves without effort. There is nothing you need to do to keep time moving. It flows on its own, just as the ocean does, carrying everything gently forward. The deep ocean teaches that time does not need to be filled to be meaningful. Here, long stretches pass without noticeable change, yet the system remains active and alive. This challenges the surface world idea that progress must always be visible or immediate. In the depths, persistence itself is enough. Memory also behaves differently here. Without events to mark moments, the idea of before and after softens. The ocean does not remember storms once their energy has faded. It does not anticipate future change. It exists in a steady present, shaped by the accumulation of countless quiet moments rather than distinct events. You may find that this perspective eases the mind. Concerns tied to schedules or timelines begin to lose their weight. In this imagined stillness, it becomes easier to let go of urgency, to allow rest to arrive naturally. Time stretches, offering space rather than demand. Geological history feels especially vast in this context. Trenches deepen over spans so long they defy easy comparison. Rock transforms slowly under pressure and heat, changing its structure without ever drawing attention to the moment it happens. These processes remind you that the planet itself moves at many different speeds, most of them far slower than human perception. Life adapts to this pace by aligning with it. Organisms do not rush to complete cycles. They exist within time rather than against it, responding only when conditions invite action. This alignment creates a sense of harmony, a quiet agreement between life and environment. As you imagine staying here longer, the idea of time passing becomes less important. What matters instead is continuity. The ocean continues, life continues, processes continue. Nothing needs to accelerate for this to happen. Everything is already in motion, just at a pace that encourages calm. This understanding gently supports relaxation. The mind does not need to track progress or outcomes. There is no end point approaching quickly. The journey itself becomes the experience, unfolding without a clear destination. You may notice how this softened sense of time invites sleep. Without signals to remain alert, the body naturally eases into rest. Thoughts drift, unanchored by urgency. Awareness becomes diffuse, spreading gently rather than focusing sharply. As this chapter settles, time feels less like a line and more like a wide, slow-moving current. You are not being carried toward anything in particular. You are simply floating within it, supported by the steady rhythm of the deep ocean. And as this stillness holds you, another gentle curiosity begins to emerge. If time moves so quietly here, how do the tools we send into the deep experience it? And what brief traces do they leave behind in a world that measures existence so differently? And as time continues its slow, even flow, a quiet question drifts upward, wondering how fleeting human presence feels in a place where moments stretch so softly and endlessly. When human curiosity finally reaches toward the deepest ocean, it does so gently, using tools designed not to stay, but to visit. These machines are not meant to conquer the depths or claim them as familiar territory. They arrive quietly, remain briefly, and then return, leaving the deep ocean much as they found it. In this way, exploration becomes more like listening than speaking, more like observation than intrusion. You can imagine the careful preparation that happens long before any descent begins. Each instrument is shaped with patience, built to withstand pressure that never relents. Smooth surfaces, rounded forms, and compact designs allow these tools to exist, even briefly, in a place where resistance would lead to failure. Nothing here is accidental. Every detail reflects respect for conditions that cannot be negotiated. As a descent begins, the movement is slow and deliberate. The tool sinks gradually, guided by gravity and balance rather than force. There is no rush downward. Pressure increases steadily, and the machine adapts by design, not by reaction. This slow approach mirrors the pace of the ocean itself, aligning exploration with the environment rather than opposing it. Light carried from the surface fades quickly, replaced by focused beams that illuminate only what lies directly ahead. These lights do not flood the darkness. They reveal small portions at a time, encouraging careful attention rather than sweeping control. What appears in their glow feels intimate and fleeting, a brief glimpse into a world that remains largely unseen. Sound, too, is used carefully. Signals travel through the water in measured pulses, mapping shapes and distances without physical contact. These echoes return softly, offering outlines rather than complete pictures. The information gathered is partial, reminding us that understanding the deep happens gradually, through accumulation rather than immediate clarity. The machines themselves remain quiet. Movement is minimal, conserving energy and reducing disturbance. Thrusters engage gently, allowing slow repositioning without stirring sediment unnecessarily. The goal is not to change the environment, but to pass through it respectfully, gathering what can be observed without leaving a lasting trace. Time behaves differently for these visitors. Descents take hours. Observations unfold slowly. Returns are just as careful, allowing pressure to decrease gradually to prevent damage. Each journey requires patience from both the tool and those waiting above. There is no instant feedback, no rapid adjustment. Everything unfolds on the ocean's terms. You may sense how this reinforces humility. Human presence in the Hadal Zone is brief and conditional. All these tools can only remain for limited periods, constrained by power, communication, and structural limits. The deep ocean does not accommodate prolonged stays easily. It allows brief visits, then encourages departure. Data collected during these journeys arrives slowly, often long after the descent has ended. Images, measurements, and samples are examined carefully, pieced together to form a clearer picture over time. Understanding grows incrementally, each mission adding small details rather than sweeping conclusions. This slow pace feels appropriate, reflecting the environment from which the information comes. The deep ocean remains unchanged by these brief encounters. Once the lights fade and the machines ascend, darkness returns fully. Currents continue their gentle movement. Life resumes its quiet rhythms without interruption. The ocean does not register the visit as an event. It simply continues. This temporary presence highlights the difference between human time and ocean time. What feels like a significant expedition above is, below, barely a moment. The deep measures existence in spans far longer than any single visit. In this context, restraint becomes not a limitation, but a natural response to scale. You may notice how calming this perspective feels. There is no urgency to document everything at once. No pressure to extract complete understanding. The deep ocean teaches that knowledge can arrive slowly without diminishing its value. In fact, the waiting becomes part of the learning. These tools also serve as reminders of boundaries. They show how far human ingenuity can reach and where it must pause. Design and technology allow access, but only within limits. Beyond those limits, patience and acceptance take over. Exploration becomes a dialogue rather than a demand. As you imagine these brief visits, your own thoughts may begin to mirror their pace. There is nothing to rush toward, nothing to claim. Understanding settles gently, like sediment drifting downward. Each idea finds its place without effort. The deep ocean does not require constant observation to exist. It does not change its behavior in response to attention. These tools simply allow a momentary window, a chance to witness without altering. This balance preserves the quiet character of the depths. You rest with the idea that humility is built into deep exploration. The machines are guests, not residents. They arrive prepared, behave carefully, and leave without protest. Their presence acknowledges that some places remain larger than our ability to stay within them. As this chapter draws to a close, the image of these tools ascending slowly comes into focus. Lights dim, signals fade, darkness resumes its complete hold. The deep ocean returns to itself, unchanged, steady, and patient. And as the last signals drift upward and vanish, the deep settles once more into quiet continuity, inviting reflection on what traces, if any, such brief visits leave behind in a world shaped by far longer rhythms. From the deepest parts of the ocean, knowledge does not arrive suddenly. It rises slowly, carried upward through faint signals and patient waiting. What reaches the surface is never the whole picture, but a quiet suggestion, a soft outline of something vast and mostly unseen. The understanding the Hadal Zone is not about revelation. It is about listening carefully to whispers that travel a very long way. When tools descend into the deep, they do not bring the ocean back with them. They bring impressions. Subtle changes in pressure, temperature, and chemistry are recorded quietly, stored like memories rather than announcements. These measurements do not shout their meaning. They wait to be interpreted gently over time. Sound plays an important role in this slow conversation between depths and surface. Low measured pulses move through the water, spreading outward and downward before returning as echoes. These returning signals carry hints of shape and distance, suggesting slopes, valleys, and open space. They are not images, but impressions requiring patience to understand. Each echo adds a small piece to a larger, slowly forming sense of place. Communication from such depths is never instant. Water absorbs and bends signals, softening them as they travel. Messages arrive delayed, sometimes fragmented, sometimes faint. This distance encourages a different relationship with information. There is no immediate response, no constant stream of updates. Instead, there is waiting and then reflection. You may notice how this pace feels calming rather than frustrating. There is no pressure to react quickly. The deep ocean sets the rhythm, and those who study it learn to follow. Information accumulates gradually, like sediment settling on the seafloor, each layer adding quiet context rather than dramatic change. Images that return from the deep are often still and limited. A narrow field of view, a small area illuminated briefly, a moment captured before darkness resumes. These images do not explain everything. They invite curiosity without satisfying it completely. The mind fills in gaps slowly, guided by careful thought rather than impulse. Samples brought back from the depths are equally modest. Small amounts of sediment, traces of chemical composition, fragments of material shaped by pressure and time. Each sample holds information, but only when considered alongside many others. Understanding grows through comparison and accumulation, not through single discoveries. This process mirrors the environment itself. The deep ocean does not reveal itself quickly. It does not change rapidly. It exists in a steady state, encouraging those who seek to understand it to slow down as well. Knowledge becomes a long conversation rather than a series of answers. You may sense how this approach reshapes curiosity. Instead of demanding immediate clarity, curiosity becomes patient. Questions remain open. Uncertainty is not a problem to solve, but a space to rest within. The deep ocean teaches that not knowing everything at once can be comfortable, even enriching. Data gathered from the depths often takes years to fully interpret. Patterns emerge slowly as information from different journeys is compared. Connections form quietly, revealing trends and relationships that were not visible at first. This gradual clarity feels appropriate, reflecting the long timescales at which the ocean operates. There is also humility in this process. Signals from the deep remind us how limited our access remains. They show what can be sensed, but also what remains beyond reach. Each piece of information is framed by what is missing, encouraging respect rather than certainty. As you imagine these signals rising through miles of water, you may feel how delicate they are. Small changes in pressure or temperature carry meaning, yet they arrive softened by distance. Understanding requires attentiveness, a willingness to notice subtlety rather than seek drama. This way of learning supports calm reflection. There is nothing urgent about these signals. They do not demand immediate action. They simply offer insight, available to those willing to wait. The mind can receive them gently without strain. The deep ocean remains largely unchanged by this exchange. It does not respond differently because it has been measured. It does not alter its rhythms in reaction to observation. Signals travel upward, but the environment below continues as it always has, steady and patient. You may notice how this reinforces a sense of balance. Human knowledge grows, but slowly. The deep ocean remains vast, its mysteries intact. There is room for curiosity without conquest, for understanding without intrusion. As this chapter settles, the idea of knowledge itself begins to soften. Knowing becomes less about accumulation and more about relationship. It is about staying connected to a place that moves at a different pace, respecting its rhythm rather than imposing one. Your breathing remains slow and easy as this understanding takes shape. There is nothing you need to remember from these signals. They have already done their work, gently expanding awareness without demanding attention. And as the faint echoes from the deep continue their long journey upward, another quiet thought begins to form. If so much remains unseen and softly known, what does it mean for a place to stay largely untouched, even as we learn more about it? And as the last quiet signals fade into understanding, the deep remains below, still and patient, inviting reflection on how much can exist beyond what we ever fully see. As you rest with the deep ocean in mind, a gentle realization begins to form. Much of what lies beneath the surface remains unseen, not because it is hidden deliberately, but because distance and difficulty naturally create space between the depths and everyday awareness. The unseen is not forgotten here. It simply exists beyond constant attention, continuing quietly without the need to be observed. The ocean is vast in a way that resists complete familiarity. Its deepest regions lie far from shore, far from light, and far from the rhythms that shape surface life. Reaching these places requires time, patience, and careful preparation, and even then, visits are brief. This distance is not a barrier to understanding, but a reminder that not all knowledge arrives easily or all at once. You may notice how comforting this idea can be. In a world that often feels overexposed and constantly documented, the deep ocean offers a different model. It suggests that mystery is not a problem to be solved, but a natural state of being. Some places remain largely unseen simply because they do not demand visibility to continue their quiet work. The complexity of the deep ocean also plays a role. Conditions change subtly but consistently. Pressure, darkness, and chemistry interact in ways that require careful interpretation. Understanding these interactions takes time and repeated observation. There is no single moment of clarity that explains everything. Knowledge here grows slowly, through patience rather than urgency. This gradual approach encourages respect. When exploration is difficult, it becomes thoughtful. Each attempt to learn is measured, each observation considered carefully. The unseen remains vast, not because it is inaccessible, but because it invites humility. It reminds us that understanding does not always mean mastery. You may sense how this perspective eases the mind. There is no expectation to know everything. The deep ocean does not judge curiosity, nor does it reward haste. It simply exists, offering glimpses when conditions allow and withholding others without intention. Even the tools designed to observe the deep are limited by these realities. They reveal small portions at a time, narrow views framed by darkness. What remains unseen between these glimpses is not empty. It is simply unobserved, continuing its steady patterns beyond the reach of light and sound. The unseen also persists because the deep ocean changes very little over short periods. Unlike surface environments shaped by daily weather and seasonal cycles, the depths remain stable. This stability reduces urgency. There is no rush to document every detail before it disappears. What exists now will likely remain much the same tomorrow and the next day and far beyond. You may find reassurance in this steadiness. It suggests that the world holds spaces that do not depend on constant interaction, places where existence is not tied to observation. The deep ocean becomes a quiet counterbalance to environments defined by rapid change and constant input. Accepting that much remains unseen allows curiosity to soften. Questions remain open, not demanding immediate answers. Wonder becomes something to rest within rather than resolve. This gentle curiosity aligns naturally with the slow pace of the deep ocean itself. The idea of the unseen also reshapes how value is understood. What remains out of sight is not less important. It continues to influence the planet through slow processes that support larger systems. Circulation patterns, chemical exchanges, and geological movements all occur quietly, regardless of attention. You may notice how this perspective mirrors the act of rest itself. When you close your eyes, the world does not disappear. It continues without you watching it. In the same way, the deep ocean continues its work without observation, reminding you that presence does not require awareness to be meaningful. As this understanding settles, the need to know everything begins to fade. There is peace in allowing some things to remain unresolved. The deep ocean offers permission to let go of constant explanation, to trust that not all mysteries need to be illuminated. This acceptance deepens calm. The mind no longer strains toward completeness. It rests instead in the knowledge that the unseen is a natural part of the world. Mystery becomes a companion rather than an obstacle. You breathe slowly as this idea takes hold. There is nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to uncover. The deep ocean remains unseen in many ways, and that is enough. And as this chapter draws to a close, another gentle thought emerges. If so much remains unseen by choice and circumstance, how does this quiet distance help preserve balance in a world shaped by constant change? And as the unseen settles comfortably into the depths, a quiet sense of balance begins to surface, inviting reflection on how distance itself can protect what continues quietly below. As you remain suspended in the deep, a wider picture begins to form. The Hadal Zone does not exist apart from the rest of the Earth. It is woven quietly into the planet's larger systems, connected through slow movements of water, energy, and matter that never draw attention to themselves. Even here, at the farthest reaches of the ocean, nothing stands alone. Everything participates in a larger, patient exchange. You may sense how the deep ocean acts like a steady anchor for the planet. While the surface responds quickly to wind, sunlight, and seasonal change, the depths respond slowly, smoothing out extremes over time. Cold, dense water sinks and spreads gradually, carrying heat away from the surface and redistributing it across vast distances. This process happens without sound or spectacle, yet it helps maintain balance on a global scale. The Hadal Zone plays its part in this quiet circulation. Water that reaches these depths remains there for long periods, moving slowly along the contours of trenches and deep basins. As it travels, it carries dissolved gases and nutrients, participating in cycles that link ocean, atmosphere, and land. These exchanges are subtle, unfolding over spans of time that feel almost timeless. You might imagine Earth as a breathing system, inhaling and exhaling slowly. The deep ocean forms part of that breath, absorbing and releasing heat and chemicals with remarkable steadiness. While surface conditions may fluctuate, the depths provide continuity, helping the planet respond gently rather than abruptly to change. Even the chemistry of the deep ocean connects to life far above. Elements cycle downward from the surface and upward from the seafloor, meeting in these quiet depths. Reactions unfold slowly, influencing water composition in ways that ripple outward over time. These processes are not dramatic, but they are essential, supporting the broader balance that allows life to persist. The seafloor itself contributes to this living system. Heat from Earth's interior moves upward through rock and sediment, shaping chemical pathways that interact with the surrounding water. These interactions release energy and materials gradually, feeding cycles that extend beyond the trenches. The planet remains active even in its quietest places. You may notice how comforting this interconnectedness feels. Nothing here is isolated or forgotten. Even the most remote regions contribute quietly to the whole. The Hadal Zone does not need to be busy or visible to matter. Its influence lies in consistency, in the way it continues its role without interruption. Life in the deep ocean reflects this integration. Organisms here are part of broader food webs, linked indirectly to surface life through slow transfers of energy and matter. Though they live far from sunlight, their existence still connects to processes that begin above, demonstrating how deeply intertwined Earth's systems truly are. This sense of connection extends beyond biology. Geological movements in the deep ocean influence the shape of continents and the circulation of water worldwide. Trenches mark boundaries where Earth's surface slowly shifts, recycling material and reshaping the planet over immense spans. These movements are part of the same system that raises mountains and opens oceans elsewhere. You may find reassurance in this slow, unified motion. The planet does not rely on sudden adjustments. It evolves through gradual shifts, guided by forces that remain steady over time. The deep ocean embodies this patience, offering stability amid constant change. As you rest with this idea, now the boundaries between regions begin to soften. Surface and depth, land and sea, living and non-living, all feel connected by slow exchanges. The Earth becomes less a collection of separate parts and more a single, breathing presence, moving at many speeds at once. This perspective encourages calm acceptance. The deep ocean does not need to be fully explored to fulfill its role. It continues its quiet work regardless of attention, supporting systems that extend far beyond its own darkness. Knowing this allows curiosity to remain gentle, free from urgency. Your breathing stays slow and easy as this understanding settles. There is nothing you need to hold on to. The idea of Earth as a living system already feels complete, carrying you without effort. And as this chapter draws to a close, another gentle curiosity begins to surface. And if such deep connections exist, how does the planet maintain balance over time? And what happens when those balances begin to shift? And as the Earth continues its slow, steady breathing, a quiet awareness drifts forward, wondering how balance is preserved across such vast distances and times. As you remain with the deep ocean, a gentle shift in perspective begins to take place. The desire to reach farther, to go deeper, to uncover everything, slowly softens. In its place, another way of knowing emerges. Here, understanding does not come from constant movement or intrusion, but from stillness, from patience, from learning how to listen rather than reach. The deep ocean does not respond well to force. It does not open itself more quickly when pressed. Instead, it reveals itself gradually, in quiet moments, when attention becomes calm and unhurried. This is not a refusal. It is an invitation to change how curiosity is expressed, to listen instead of demanding answers, to wait instead of pushing forward. You may sense how this mirrors the way sound travels in water. Loud noises scatter and fade, losing clarity as they move through the depths. Gentle signals, sent carefully and patiently, travel farther and return with meaning intact. The ocean favors subtlety. It rewards those who move softly and observe closely. Listening in this context is not passive. It is attentive and deliberate. It means allowing information to arrive in its own time, noticing small changes rather than seeking dramatic discoveries. It means accepting that understanding may form slowly through repeated observation and reflection rather than sudden insight. The deep ocean becomes a symbol of this approach. It reminds us that not everything needs to be reached physically to be understood. Some knowledge arrives through patterns, through consistency, through long-term observation. By listening carefully to signals, to trends, to quiet shifts, a deeper understanding takes shape without disturbance. You may notice how calming this idea feels. There is no urgency to move forward, no pressure to extract meaning immediately. The deep ocean teaches that waiting is not wasted time. It is part of the process. In waiting, context forms. Connections become clearer. Meaning settles naturally. This philosophy extends beyond exploration. It speaks to how learning itself can unfold. When attention is gentle, the mind becomes more receptive. Instead of chasing information, you allow it to come to you. Understanding feels less like effort and more like absorption, as if knowledge settles softly into place. The deep ocean does not mind being observed from a distance. It continues its quiet work regardless of attention. By listening instead of reaching, we align ourselves with its rhythm. We become observers rather than disruptors, participants rather than intruders. You may sense how this aligns with rest. When you stop reaching mentally, the body follows. Muscles soften. Breathing deepens. Thoughts lose their sharp edges. The act of listening becomes internal as well as external, allowing awareness to settle into the present moment without strain. In the deep ocean, restraint is not limitation, it is balance. By moving carefully and observing patiently, exploration remains respectful. The environment remains intact. Knowledge grows without cost. This balance feels sustainable, both for the planet and for the mind. Even technology reflects this philosophy when used well. Instruments designed to observe quietly, to gather information without altering their surroundings, embody restraint. They listen more than they act. They record rather than impose. Their success depends not on power, but on sensitivity. You may notice how this approach contrasts with the pace of everyday life above. So much effort is spent reaching, acquiring, achieving. The deep ocean offers a counterpoint, suggesting that some understanding comes from stillness, from allowing things to unfold without interference. This does not mean abandoning curiosity. It means reshaping it. Curiosity becomes a quiet presence rather than a driving force. Questions remain open, held gently rather than pursued aggressively. Wonder becomes something you rest within, not something you chase. As you imagine adopting this posture of listening, the mind begins to mirror the environment. Thoughts drift more slowly. Attention broadens. There is space between ideas, allowing them to breathe. The need to resolve or conclude fades, replaced by comfort with openness. The deep ocean teaches that patience is not emptiness. It is full of subtle activity, quiet motion, steady processes. Listening reveals this richness without disturbing it. In the same way, inner stillness reveals depth without effort. You may sense how this philosophy supports sleep. When you stop reaching for the next thought, the next task, the next answer, the body naturally eases into rest. Awareness remains, but it is soft and spacious. Nothing needs to be held tightly. As this chapter settles, the deep ocean feels less like a place to be explored and more like a presence to be respected. Its lesson is simple and profound. Some things are best understood by waiting, by listening, by allowing time and distance to do their quiet work. You breathe slowly, feeling supported by this idea. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to reach for. The deep ocean continues its steady existence, and you are free to rest alongside it, attentive but unhurried. And as this calm deepens, another gentle thought begins to surface. If listening and restraint create balance, how does leaving some places untouched help preserve that balance over time? And as listening replaces reaching, a quiet awareness lingers, wondering how restraint itself becomes a form of care in the deepest parts of the world. As you rest with the idea of the deep ocean, a quiet understanding begins to settle. Some places remain untouched, not because they are forgotten, but because they serve their purpose best when left as they are. The Hadal Zone is one of these places. Its stillness is not absence. It is stability, a form of balance that does not call attention to itself, yet supports the wider world in subtle and lasting ways. In the deepest parts of the ocean, continuity matters more than change. Conditions remain steady over long periods. Temperature shifts little. Darkness holds constant. Pressure never relents. This consistency allows systems to settle into equilibrium, where life, chemistry, and geology align without interruption. When nothing is disturbed, patterns hold, and balance becomes self-sustaining. You may notice how different this feels from environments shaped by frequent interaction. On the surface, landscapes are altered constantly by weather, movement, and human presence. Change is visible and immediate. In contrast, the deep ocean changes so slowly that it feels timeless. This slowness protects what exists there, allowing processes to unfold without disruption. Untouched spaces act as anchors within the planet's larger systems. They absorb change gently rather than amplifying it. In the deep ocean, excess heat is stored and redistributed slowly. Chemical exchanges happen at measured rates. These quiet processes help smooth fluctuations that might otherwise feel abrupt elsewhere. Balance emerges not through control, but through patience. Life in these regions reflects the same principle. Organisms that exist in the Hadal Zone are adapted to constancy. They rely on stable conditions to survive. Sudden disturbance could upset carefully tuned systems. Remaining untouched allows life to persist in forms that have proven resilient over long spans of time. You may sense how this idea extends beyond biology. Geological processes also benefit from continuity. Sediment layers accumulate gradually, recording Earth's history without interruption. Rock transforms under pressure and heat over immense periods. These changes require time and stability. Disturbance would alter the record, breaking the quiet narrative written into the seafloor. The concept of untouched does not imply isolation. The deep ocean remains connected to the rest of the planet through slow circulation and exchange. Water moves in and out of trenches. Elements cycle between depths and surface. These connections are gentle and continuous, allowing influence without disruption. Balance is maintained through relationship rather than intrusion. You might find comfort in this perspective. It suggests that not every place needs to be accessed or altered to matter. Some environments contribute most by remaining steady, offering continuity in a world often defined by change. The deep ocean shows how restraint can be active rather than passive. This idea also reshapes how value is understood. Untouched does not mean unused. The Hadal Zone plays a quiet role in regulating planetary systems, even if it is rarely visited. Its value lies in persistence, in the way it continues to function without intervention. This quiet resilience supports the broader stability of Earth. As you imagine this balance, your own thoughts may begin to settle. There is relief in knowing that not everything requires attention. Some things work best when allowed to continue undisturbed. This realization invites rest, both for the planet and for the mind. The deep ocean offers a lesson in sufficiency. It does not strive to become something else. It does not adapt quickly to external demands. It remains what it is, trusting that its steady state is enough. In doing so, it provides a foundation upon which other systems can rely. You may notice how this aligns with the idea of grounding. When the world feels uncertain or fast-moving, untouched places offer reassurance. They remind us that stability exists, that some processes continue regardless of surface conditions. The deep ocean becomes a symbol of this enduring calm. Balance here is not enforced. It arises naturally from consistency and time. The environment does not resist change aggressively. It simply changes slowly, allowing adjustments to integrate smoothly. This approach reduces stress within the system, preventing sudden shifts that could cascade outward. As you breathe slowly, this understanding settles into a sense of ease. There is nothing you need to do to support this balance. It already exists, maintained by forces far larger and slower than individual action. The deep ocean continues its quiet work, steady and reliable. You may find that this perspective softens urgency. The need to intervene, to fix, to alter begins to fade. Some spaces do not require improvement. They require respect. Allowing them to remain untouched becomes an act of care rather than neglect. The Hadal Zone embodies this principle fully. Its depth, darkness, and pressure discourage frequent intrusion. In doing so, they protect a system that thrives on stability. The planet benefits from this restraint, even if it goes unnoticed. As this chapter draws toward its close, the idea of balance feels less abstract and more embodied. You sense it in the steady weight of the ocean, in the slow movement of water, in the quiet persistence of life adapted to constancy. Balance here is not dramatic. It is gentle and enduring. Your thoughts grow heavier, calmer, as this understanding takes root. There is nothing you need to remember. The idea of untouched balance has already done its work, offering reassurance without demand. And as this calm deepens, another gentle reflection begins to form. If untouched spaces help preserve balance, what happens when the journey itself comes to rest and attention turns inward, allowing the night to carry everything onward? And as untouched depths continue their quiet work, a final stillness begins to gather, inviting the journey itself to slow, soften, and come gently toward rest. You find yourself at the quietest edge of the journey now, where the ocean no longer invites dissent and no longer asks questions. Everything that needed to unfold has already done so, gently and without effort. The deep rests exactly as it always has, and you rest with it, suspended in a place where nothing is required and nothing is expected. Here, at this deepest edge, the ocean feels complete, not finished, but whole. Its slow systems continue without pause, guided by balance rather than intention. Water moves in almost imperceptible patterns. Pressure holds steady. Darkness remains soft, and constant. There is no signal announcing this moment as an ending. It simply arrives naturally, as all quiet things do. As you linger here, the scale of the world feels wide and unhurried. The surface, with its motion and sound, feels very far away, almost like a distant thought. Down here, the planet breathes slowly. Heat shifts gently through water and stone. Chemical exchanges continue their patient cycles. Life persists quietly, doing exactly what it needs to do, no more and no less. You may notice how little effort is involved in this persistence. Nothing struggles, nothing rushes to arrive somewhere else. Everything exists in balance with its surroundings, is shaped by conditions that have remained steady for longer than memory can reach. The deep ocean does not seek attention. It does not demand understanding. It simply continues. Your body responds to this steadiness without instruction. Breathing slows, muscles soften. The need to follow thoughts to their conclusions fades away. There is nothing you need to hold on to now. The ideas you have encountered do not need to be remembered or organized. They have already settled where they belong, like sediment drifting gently into place. The Hadal Zone, in all its depth and quiet resilience, becomes less a location and more a feeling, a sense of stillness. A reminder that the world holds many layers, most of them calm and unseen. These layers do not require supervision. They continue their work regardless of awareness, supporting the larger systems that shape life far above. You may sense a quiet gratitude for this continuity. Knowing that so much of the planet remains steady allows the mind to rest. There is comfort in understanding that not everything depends on constant action or decision. Some processes unfold perfectly well without involvement, guided by forces that move slowly and reliably. As this awareness deepens, the idea of journey begins to soften. There is no clear boundary between exploration and rest now. Curiosity has eased into acceptance. Questions have relaxed into presence. The deep ocean no longer feels distant or mysterious. It feels familiar in its steadiness, reassuring in its silence. Time here feels especially gentle. Without markers or transitions, moments blend together seamlessly. There is no sense of before or after. Only a quiet now, stretching comfortably in all directions. This timelessness invites sleep naturally, without effort or intention. You may notice how thoughts begin to drift, less defined, less attached. Images soften. Words lose their sharp edges. The mind follows the ocean's example, releasing urgency and settling into a slower rhythm. Nothing needs to be resolved. Nothing needs to be completed. The deep ocean continues its quiet existence as you rest alongside it. Trenches remain shaped by time. Water circulates slowly through unseen pathways. Life persists in calm, measured ways. These processes do not pause because you are listening. They do not change because you are resting. They simply continue, steady and dependable. There is reassurance in this independence. The world does not rely on constant awareness to function. Indeed, it holds itself together with remarkable patience. You are free to let go, knowing that everything essential continues whether or not you are watching. If you enjoy these slow explorations, you can support the channel in any small way that feels natural, so others can find this calm too. There is no urgency in this thought. It floats gently through the mind and then drifts away, leaving no pressure behind. For now, there is nothing to decide and nowhere to go. The journey does not need a strong ending. It simply dissolves into rest, like a wave flattening into the surface after a long, gentle roll. You are carried not forward, but inward, toward quiet. As you remain here, the world feels wide and still. So many quiet processes continue, whether they are seen or not. You do not need to follow them. You do not need to understand them fully. Their steady presence is enough. Your breathing becomes the only rhythm that matters, slow and even. Each breath arrives without effort and leaves without resistance. The body feels supported, as if the deep itself is holding you gently, asking nothing in return. Thoughts soften further. Muscles relax. The edges of awareness blur comfortably. The night opens wide, ready to carry you onward without direction or demand. And as the deep ocean continues its endless calm below, you allow yourself to drift with it, one peaceful breath at a time. Let your thoughts soften, your muscles relax, and the night carry you onward, one peaceful breath at a time.